بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue going over the tremendous book by the Fadilat al-Shaykh al-Allama Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan Hafidhahullahu Ta'ala, and this is his tremendous book which he has entitled Kitab Aqeedatut Tawheed, the book of the Aqeedah of Tawheed. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We had concluded from the third chapter, and with that we had concluded from the first section of the book. Now we move on to the second section of the book. Inside of this section, the Shaykh, he begins with the first fasl, which is في بيان معنى توحيد الربوبية وإقرار المشركين به. It is the explanation of the meaning of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah and the fact that the polytheists, they agree with it, and the fact that the polytheists, they are in agreement with regards to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And as we had mentioned in other classes, you will find that there was never a prophet or messenger who came to his people and he called them to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And this is because, as we will see, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, human beings in general, they believe already in Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. But rather you found that the Anbiya and the Rusul, they came and they called their people to Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and they utilized Tawheed al-Rububiyyah as a dalil for Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. They utilized Tawheed al-Rububiyyah as a dalil for Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Naam, they utilize Tawheed al-Rububiyyah as a dalil for Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. And this is a concept that I want you to keep in the back of your minds, inshallah ta'ala, because as we go through the class, you will see this more and more and more, how Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is utilized as a proof and a hujjah against those polytheists. And it proves and establishes that all the worship belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a dalil for Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. But first we have to know what is intended by Tawheed al-rububiyyah. What is Tawheed al-rububiyyah? Naam. And let us go back actually. Before that, let us know what is Tawheed. What is Tawheed in general? Naam. So firstly, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we want you to put the general definition and the concise definition of Tawheed. The general and concise definition of Tawheed. But here, Tawheed, and you see what we mean by concise, because this definition contains all the categories of Tawheed. Tawheed, ma'nahu al-aam, the Shaykh, he says that Tawheed, its general meaning, huwa i'tiqad tafarrudillah ta'ala birububiyyah. Again, المعنى العام التوحيد هو اعتقاد تفرد الله تعالى بالربوبية وإخلاص العبادة له وإثبات ما له من الأسماء والصفات. The general definition for Tawheed, it is the belief, the creed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be singled out in lordship, and that all acts of worship have to be sincerely for Him, for Allah Jalla wa Ala, and that we affirm to Allah from His names and His attributes, that we affirm those names and attributes that belong to Him. This is the general and concise meaning of Tawheed. But when one reflects upon it, then he will see the three categories of Tawheed have been articulated therein. The three categories of Tawheed, they have been articulated therein. No. Everyone got that? Or down? No? For you. The Shaykh, he says, فَهُوَ ثَلَاثَ أَنْوَاعٍ. And the Tawheed, it is three categories. And this is very important. At Tawheed, it is three categories. If you ever hear anyone claiming that there are actually four categories, then know for a surety that this individual is upon misguidance. If anyone comes and he says, but there is a fourth category, يعني نوع الرابع للتوحيد, then know that this individual is upon misguidance. This individual is upon misguidance. Naam. And more particularly, and more specifically, that this individual, he is from and upon the way of the Khawarij. He's upon the way of the Khawarij. Naam. Because they will come and they will say that the fourth category of Tawheed is Tawheed al-Hakimiyyah. The Tawheed, that all of the legislation and act of making legislation belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that this is a fourth category of Tawheed. And the reality of the fact is that this is not a fourth category of Tawheed, because this concept is clearly there, as Shaykh Rabi' hafidhahullah ta'ala, he mentions, this concept is clearly dealt with and covered by the first two categories of Tawheed. This category or this concept of al-Hakimiyyah is covered and it is encompassed in Tawheed al-Rububiyyah wa Uluhiyyah. So there's no reason to single it out and identify it, except like Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, kalimatul haq yuridu biha al-batil. When they come and they say, but the Hakimiyyah is for Allah. Naam, this is a true statement, but they intend by falsehood. They intend by falsehood. What is it they intend by it? They want to utilize it as a means to make takfir on the Muslims, just like the first Khawarij, they utilized this issue of Hakimiyya to make takfir on the Sahaba. To make takfir on the Sahaba. Naam. Ala kullin, this is why the Shaykh, he says, فَهُوَ ثَلَاثَ أَنْوَاعٍ, that the Tawheed, it is three categories. Three categories. Firstly, التوحيد الربوبية. The first one is التوحيد الربوبية. And this is the Tawheed of the Lordship of Allah Jalla wa Ala. The second category is التوحيد الألوهية. التوحيد الألوهية. And this is the Tawheed that all of the acts of worship belong to Allah and to Allah alone. Which brings us to the third category and final category of At-Tawheed. And this is At-Tawheed Al-Asma' Wa-Sifat. The Tawheed in the names and the attributes. In the names and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says something which is very important. He says, فَكُلُّ نُوعٍ لَهُ مَعْنَى. He said each and every one of these categories, they have a meaning. Each and every one of these categories, they have a meaning. لَبُدَّ مِنْ بَيَانِهِ. They have a meaning that has to be explained. It has to be explained. نعم. ليتحدد الفرق بين هذه الأنواع, so that we may know the distinction between these categories, so that we may be able to identify the distinction between these categories of At-Tawheed. And this is an indication which shows you that the affair of At-Tawheed, it is the most detailed affair. That the affair of Aqeedah, it is something that is detailed. It is not that which is to be belittled. So an individual thinks that Tawheed is something that is so super simple that you can learn it in a few days and then that's it. And you have individuals who say the likes of this foolishness, that Tawheed is Aqeedah is simple, you can learn it in a few days and then that's it, you move on. You don't have to stay a long time. But we understand that this is not the case, in the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, throughout the course of the time when he was in Mecca, he called his people to a Tawheed and a rectification of their Aqeedah. And the time in which he was in Mecca was not a few days. It's not a few days, it was years, more than a decade, 13 years. He was inside of Mecca and he called the people to the rectification of their Aqeedah. Naam. And then once he made the hijrah to Al-Madinah, the Prophet ﷺ, he continued to teach Tawheed. He didn't stop and say that 13 years was enough. He continued to teach Tawheed until he died. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. To remind the people. Naam. And this is something which is important. That the affair of Tawheed and the affair of Aqeedah is something that is a constant. Is a constant in the life of a Muslim. Is a constant in the life of a Muslim. Right? And this will serve as information to those who don't know, to inform those who don't know, and a reinforcement and reminder for those who know. A reinforcement and a reminder for those who know. Ala kulli hal. Each and every one of these categories, there has a meaning that has to be explained so that we will know the difference between them. We will know what they are and how they differ from the other categories. But Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, so Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, the Shaykh mentions, what is it Tawheed al-Rububiyyah? It is huwa ifradullah ta'ala bi-af'alih. That Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, it is the singling out of Allah ta'ala alone with regards to His actions. And this is a very important concept, because this particular concept, it may not be apparent in the translation of rububiyyah, because we find the translation of rububiyyah as lordship, right? To single out Allah alone in lordship, right? And this is, of course, an effort of the translators to translate and to express these concepts inside of the English language, and it's a good attempt. It's a good attempt, right? But as we know, there are a lot of things that are lost inside of translation. There are a lot of things that are lost inside of translation, and although this carries the general scope of the meaning, there are other aspects of the meaning that are missing, and that we need to know, need to study. So it's not another person, they say, oh yeah, I know what Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is, that's Tawheed Allah, lordship, and then he keep moving. But you have to study it, because like we said, the word lordship, you may not understand from it that what is being spoken about is singling out Allah Ta'ala alone with regards to His actions. You may not understand that from lordship. Maybe your English is better than mine, and it probably is better than mine, but I didn't understand that from the word lordship, right? And this is why it's important that we study, and that we always are humbled to review and to go with things that we had studied in the past, because you will find, the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. So a person shouldn't come and say, oh, I read a book on that subject before, so I'm good. No, you ain't good. Read it again. Or read another book on the same subject, because this author is going to bring things that the other author didn't bring. And then if there are things in there that you learned before, then you will reinforce that which you have with you, and you will pick up on some new things, and so on and so forth. This stuff is very important that we understand the likes of this. Ala kulli hal, the Shaykh, he says, so it is ifradullah ta'ala bi af'ali. It is the singling out Allah alone as relates to His actions. Naam, bi an yu'taqad annahu wahda al-khaliq li jami' al-makhluqat. The Shaykh, he says, this is an aspect, he says, is to believe that Allah is one, and He is the only creator of everything that exists. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of everything that exists. There is nothing inside the creation except that Allah ta'ala is the creator of it. Right? Everything. Everything. And the proof of this is Allah ta'ala's statement as it comes in Surah Az-Zumar in His verse 62, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. That Allah is the creator of everything. Allah is the creator of everything. So we understand from that Allah is the creator of everything. So a person, he says, yes, Allah is the creator, then this will enter into which category of Tawheed? Which one? Rububiyyah. Naam. The Shaykh goes on and he says, وَأَنَّهُ, and also to believe, وَأَنَّهُ الرَّازِقُ لِجَمِيعِ نعم لجميع الدابة وآدميين. That Allah is the creator, or Allah is the sustainer, of all animals and all human beings. Naam, of all animals and all human beings, وغيرهم, and other than that. And other than that. That Allah is a sustainer for everything. There's not a single creature except that Allah sustains it. And the proof of this can be found in Surah Hud, verse number 6, where Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. And there is no creature inside of the earth except that Allah is the one who provides for it, or except that it is upon Allah to provide for it. Allah is the provider for it. So Allah Ta'ala, He provides for all the creatures in the earth, whether they're humans, whether they're jinns, whether they're animals, invertebrates, reptiles, mammals, amphibians, so the end of it. Allah sustains every creature, everything. Allah is his sustainer. So the person, he comes and he says that Allah is the sustainer and the provider of everything, then this will enter into which category of Tawheed? Rububiyyah. And the Shaykh, he says, وَأَنَّهُ مَالِكُ الْمُلْكِ, and that verily he is the owner of the dominion. And that verily Allah is the owner of the dominion. نعم. وَمُدَبِّرْ لِشُؤُونِ الْعَالَمِ كُلَّهِ, and that Allah and that Allah is the arranger of the affairs of all of the world, all of it. Allah is the arranger of the affairs. Naam. That Allah Ta'ala is the arranger of the affairs. But yeah, that Allah Ta'ala, he is the one who arranges that some have children and that others are barren. He is the one who honors some and puts down others. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَادِرٌ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and that Allah, he has the ability to do all things. يُصَرِّفُ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, Allah Ta'ala is the one who he brings about and he moves the day and the night. وَيُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ, and Allah is the one who gives life and he gives death. All of these affairs, then they are from which category of Tawheed? Rububiyyah. And when one reflects upon them all, then you realize that they're all connected to what? To the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one whom he gives to this one, he takes from that one, raises this one, lowers that one, gives this one children, makes that one barren, brings the night, brings the day, gives life, gives death, so on and so forth, arranges the affairs. All of this is connected to the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus it is from at-Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Naam. We're stressing this and pointing this out because this is very important to know. Because a lot of people, they will agree in this particular, or these particular facts. They will agree with this, right? But as we know, if a person agrees in these things only, and I highlight the word only, right? Would that be enough to make them a Muslim? No. But they will have to what? Single out Allah Ta'ala in his ibadah, and they will have to single out Allah Ta'ala in his names and his attributes. It has to be it all. And inshallah we'll touch more on this. Ala kullin, Allah Ta'ala, he says in Surah Ali Imran, in his verse number 26 and 27, Allah Ta'ala, he says, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكُ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي مُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُضِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ تُولِجُ اللَّيْلَ فِي النَّهَارِ وَتُولِجُ النَّهَارَ فِي اللَّيْلِ وَتُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَتُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ وَتَرْزُقُ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. There comes inside of Surah Ali Imran, as mentioned, verse 26 and 27, that is said in saying, O Allah, you are the owner of the dominion. You give the kingdom to whom you please, and you take the kingdom away from whom you please. Now, this is something that's very important to know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives authority to those whom he gives authority to, and Allah ta'ala is the one who removes from authority those whom he chooses to remove from authority. Now, it's all inside the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It goes on and it says, what translated means, you give honor and you raise the one whom you please, and you debase and humiliate the one whom you please. Inside of your hand is all good, and verily you are over all things most capable. You bring the night to the day upon the day, and then you bring the day upon the night. You bring out the living from the dead, and you bring out the dead from the living. You give provisions to whom you please without any hisab, without any account. You give provisions to whom you please with no account. Now, all of these affairs that are mentioned here in these two verses, they are from the affairs of which category of the Tawheed? Rububiyyah. Naam. And when one reflects and looks at everything that is mentioned here, then these are things that are connected to Allah Ta'ala's what? Actions. Naam. These are things that are connected to the af'al, the actions of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, وَقَدْ نَفَى اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ شَرِيكٌ فِي الْمُلْكِ. And Allah Ta'ala, He has negated that He has any partner inside of His dominion. Allah does not share His ownership of the kingdom with anyone. Allah is the only owner of all that exists. There's no partner there, right? There's no partner. كما نفى سبحانه وتعالى أن يكون له شريك في الخلق والرزق. He says, just as He has negated, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has any partner inside of the creation and inside of the giving of provisions. Allah has negated. He has no partner inside of the ownership of the dominion, just as He has no partner as relates to creation and as relates to giving provisions. There is no creator except Allah. There is no provider except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that's very important for us to know. Allah does not share in His kingdom, and Allah does not share any with regards to creating things, and He doesn't share with regards to providing for things. He is the sole provider, He is the sole creator, He is the sole owner of everything. As Allah Ta'ala, He says, هَذَا خَلْقُ اللَّهِ. This is the creation that belongs to Allah. Allah Ta'ala, He says, فَأَرُونِي مَاذَا خَلَقَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. Allah Ta'ala, He says, this creation, everything you see in existence, it belongs to Allah. So now you show me what they have, what those things other than Allah have created. Allah Ta'ala says, so you show me those things other than Allah, what have they created? And of course the answer is what? Nothing. Nothing. Allah Ta'ala, He says, أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرُزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and who is the one who can give you provisions if Allah restricts your provisions? Allah restricts your provisions. Who can give you provisions? Right? Who? Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has restricted and prohibited for you from you water. No more water is going to touch your throat. Who can give you water? Nobody. Allah Ta'ala has restricted from you air. Who can put air in your lungs? Nobody. Only Allah Ta'ala. If Allah has taken it away from you, no one can give it to you. No one can give it to you. Naam. Allah Ta'ala, He says, كما أعلن انفرادا بالربوبية على جميع الخلق. The Shaykh, he says, just as Allah Ta'ala, He has informed us of that He is alone with regards to His rububiyyah upon all of His creation. فقال الله تعالى الحمد لله رب العالمين. All praise and thanks belong to Allah, the Lord of all that exists. Naam. All praise and thanks belong to Allah, the Lord of all that exists. وقال الله تعالى إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. Allah Ta'ala, He says, what means informing mankind that all of the dominions of the heavens and the earth, it belongs to Allah and to Allah alone. There is no partner with Allah with regards to His rububiyyah, like there is no partner with Allah as regards to anything else. Allah Ta'ala, He says, what means? And verily, your Lord is Allah who has created the heavens and the earth. And I want you to pay attention to what is mentioned. And that verily your Lord is Allah who has created the heavens and who has created the earth in 6 days. Then He rose above His throne. He brings the night over the day and He seeks it rapidly. And the sun and the moon and the stars, they are all upon their courses, or they are all subjected to their courses by His command. Then Allah Ta'ala, He says, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. Does it not belong only to Allah, the creation and the command? Does it not belong only to Allah, the creation and the command? Glory be to He, Allah, the Lord of all that exists. And this ayah can be found in Surah Al-A'raf, in its verse 53. This verse is very important because in it we find Allah Ta'ala's statement, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. And verily it belongs to Him, the khalq and the amr. Excuse me, this is from Surah Al-A'raf, verse 54. Make an adjustment to your notes. Not 53, but 54. Excuse me. So Allah Ta'ala, inside of this ayah, He mentions that He is the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and He rose above His throne. He brings the night as a covering over the day, seeking it rapidly. He has created the sun and the moon and the stars, subjected to His commands. And for Him is the creation and the command. Blessed is Allah, the Lord of all that exists. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he utilized this ayah as a tremendous dalil. Right? This ayah here, Surah Al-A'raf, verse 54, a tremendous dalil. Allah says, and verily, and does it not belong only to Allah, al-khalq wal-amr, the creation and the command. Right? As far as the creation, we know what the creation is. Right? We understand the word creation. Right? But then Allah Ta'ala, He says, wal-amr, and the command. So we understand from this that the command is not from the creation. You with me? We understand that the command and the creation are two different things. Right? So we understand, being that they're two different things, because it says al-khalq wal-amr, the creation and the command. That the command is not from the creation, it's different. So now the question becomes, what's the command? What's the command? What's intended by al-amr? Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said what is intended by al-amr, it means al-Qur'an. It means the Qur'an. And thus he used this as another proof and evidence that the Qur'an is a kalam of Allah, غير المخلوق. That the Qur'an is the speech of Allah, is not created. He said, because once we know that al-amr here in this ayah, it means the Qur'an, then we know it's not created, because Allah Ta'ala mentions wal-khalq, or al-khalq wal-amr, the creation and the amr, meaning the Qur'an. And it's different. So therefore we know that the Qur'an is the speech of Allah and it is not created. So this here is another proof and evidence that the Qur'an is the speech of Allah and is not created. It is not created. Now, the Shaykh, he says, وَقَدْ فَطَرَ اللَّهُ جميع الخلق على إقرار بربوبيته. That Allah, He has given the fitra or natural inclination to all of the creation to agree and acknowledge, or to agree with the lordship or rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, that all of the creatures at some level, and we're going to go more into this particular point, but they affirm the rububiyyah to Allah Jalla wa Ala. The Shaykh, he says, حتى إن المشركين, even the polytheists, even the idolaters, they agree and they acknowledge the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Naam. The Shaykh, he says, the mushrikeen الذين جعلوا له شريكا في العبادة, those polytheists who they make rivals for Allah inside of worship, يقرون بتفرده بالربوبية, they agree that He is alone as relates to rububiyyah. He is alone as it relates to rububiyyah. كما قال الله تعالى, and what's the dalil? كما قال الله تعالى, as Allah Ta'ala, He says, قل من رب السماوات السبع ورب العرش العظيم. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and say to them, O Muhammad, who is the Lord of the seven heavens and of the tremendous throne? Who is the Lord? Ask them, O Muhammad. Meaning who? Meaning those polytheists. Ask those kuffar, those polytheists. And who is the Lord of the seven heavens, and who is the Lord of the mighty throne? Allah Ta'ala, He says, سَيَقُولُونَ لِلَّهِ, they will say, it is for Allah, it belongs to Allah, they are Allah's, He is the Lord of the seven heavens and the mighty throne. This is what they will say, they will admit to. Allah Ta'ala goes on and He says, قُلْ أَفَلَا تَتَّقُونَ, so then say to them, will you not then have taqwa? Will you not then fear Him? Allah Ta'ala, He says, قُلْ مَنْ بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ يَجِيرُ وَلَا يُجَارُ عَلَيْهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Right? Allah Ta'ala, and these ayat can be found in Surah Al-Mu'minun, in His verse 89 or 86 to 89. Verse 86 to 89. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and say to them, in whose hand is the sovereignty of everything? In whose hand is the sovereignty of everything? Right? All of the treasures of everything that exists. In whose hands is the sovereignty and the dominion of everything? And He who protects all, while against whom there is no protector. He who protects all, but from against whom there is no protector. They have here in the translation, i.e., if Allah saves anyone, none can punish or harm him. But if Allah punishes someone, no one can save him. Now, the ayah, it goes on and it says, if you know, meaning give me the answer, in whose hands is the sovereignty of everything? He, Allah, who protects all, while against whom there is no protection. Who, if you know? Allah Ta'ala, He says, سَيَقُولُونَ لِلَّهِ, that these polytheists, they will answer and they will say, all belongs to Allah. It all belongs to Allah. Allah Ta'ala, He says, قُلْ فَأَنَّا تُصْرَحُونَ. So then say to them, then why are you deceived and why are you turned away from the truth? If you acknowledge this, why are you deceived and why are you turning away from the truth? Naam. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Because once a person has acknowledged the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah is alone in His actions, that Allah is the only creator, the only sustainer, the only one who gives life, the only one who causes death, the only arranger of the affairs, so on and so forth. If one acknowledges all of these things belong to Allah and Allah alone, then they have to, the sound mind has to acknowledge, then all worship belongs to Allah and Allah alone. Because worship is only worthy to the one who creates. That's it. The creator, He is the one who deserves worship alone. The sustainer, He is the one who deserves worship alone. The one who arranges the affairs, brings the night, brings the day, so on and so forth, He is the one that deserves worship alone. The one who has subjected the sun and the moon and the stars to His command, that's the only one who deserves to be worshipped alone. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one and nothing else. And if a person acknowledges that Allah ta'ala is the one who does these things only alone by Himself, then he must subsequently acknowledge that Allah ta'ala deserves to be worshipped alone. This is why Allah ta'ala, He says, قُلْ أَفَلَا تَأْتَقُونَ قُلْ فَأَنَّا تُسْحَرُونَ. Allah Ta'ala, He says, then say to them, if they acknowledge this, say to them, then will you not then fear Allah? If they acknowledge this, then say to them, then where are you turning away to? Where are you going? Why are you turning away from the truth if you know and you acknowledge all these things? Naam. Ala kullin, we see from these ayat that these kuffar, these polytheists, they agree with at-Tawheed, al-Rububiyyah. But with that, they were still what? Kuffar. They were still kuffar. And this has to be highlighted because you have individuals whom, if you will ask them, what is the meaning of La ilaha illallah? Remember, La ilaha illallah, this kalima is the distinction between al-fasila bayn al-kufri wal-iman. This is the distinction between disbelief and between belief. Between disbelief and between true faith. The kalima of La ilaha illallah. You have individuals who will give a translation and explanation to this kalima that only comprises a rububiyyah. When they will say that the meaning of La ilaha illallah, it means that there is no khaliq, no raziq, no mudabbir except Allah ta'ala. That there is no creator, no sustainer, no arranger of the affairs except Allah. And that's what La ilaha illallah means, and that's it. So we reject this and say, no, it can't mean that. Why? Because if a person believes in that alone, that's not enough for them to be what? Muslim. So how can that which distinguishes between kufr and iman only mean that which won't enter you into iman? Can't mean it. That's how we know that their explanation is erroneous. Now, أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. لا حول ولا قوة لا حول ولا قوة لا حول ولا قوة. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. Shaykh goes on and he says, فهذا التوحيد لم يذهب إلى نقيضه طائفة معروفة من بني آدم. He says, so you will find that this Tawheed, it is not well known any group of the children of Adam who have opposed it. Now, there is not well known any group of the children of Adam who have opposed it. بل قلوب مفطورة على إقرار به. But you find that the hearts, then they have the natural inclination to agree with it. Now, they have the natural inclination to agree with it. كما قالت الرسل فيما حكى الله عنهم, as the messengers, they have said, as Allah Ta'ala, He informs us about their statement. قالت رسلهم, and their messenger said to them, أفي الله شك, do you have doubt in Allah, فاطر السماوات والأرض, the one who fashioned the heavens and the earth? Do you have doubt in Allah, the one who fashioned the heavens and the earth? So you see here, in this ayah can be found in Surah Ibrahim, in its verse number 10. But you see here that this is another example on how at-Tawheed al-Rububiyyah was used as a proof to establish at-Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. The Shaykh, he says, وَأَشْهَرُ مَنْ عُرِفَ تَجَاهُلُ وَتَظَاهِرُهُ بِإِنْكَارِ الرَّبِّ Fir'aun. And the one who is famous, right? Because a person may come and he say, but wait, we have atheists, we have people who say they don't believe in a creator, right? So the Shaykh, he says about the most famous one, the most famous denier of the creator, the most famous denier of the Lord. He says, and the one who was well known, his abstinence, and he was very vocal and clear about his denial of the Lord, then verily that was Fir'aun. Then that was Fir'aun. Right? This is well known. We're all on the same page. That Fir'aun, he clearly, adamantly denies that Allah existed. Right? And with Fir'aun, you can, those lesser ones who make this claim, you'll find the same thing applies to them as well. In reality, at the end of the affair, the same thing applies to them as well. All these atheists and quote-unquote people believe in science and so on and so forth, you'll find at the end of the affair, the same thing applies to them as well. The Shaykh, he says, وَقَدْ كَانَ مُسْتَيْقِنًا بِهِ فِي الْبَاطِنِ كَمَا قَالَ لَهُ مُوسَى قَالَ لَقَدْ عَمِلْتَ مَا أَنزَلَ هَؤُلَاءِ إِلَّا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بِصَائِرٍ. He says here in this ayah that can be found in Surah Isra. In Surah Isra, in his verse 102, where Musa, Allah Ta'ala informs that Musa alayhi salam, he said, verily you know that these signs have been sent down by none but the Lord of the heavens and the earth, as a clear evidence, i.e. a proof of the oneness of Allah Ta'ala, and that Allah is all powerful. Naam. So Musa alayhi salam, even with Fir'aun saying that he did, or his quote-unquote denial, right? Even with that, Musa alayhi salam, despite his claim, told him, but you know, despite what your mouth is saying, but you know that verily all of these signs have been sent down by none but the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Naam. So people will make a claim, but they know, as Musa told him, as Allah Ta'ala informs us. قَالَ لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ. You know. And Allah Ta'ala, He tells us in Surah Al-Nahl, in his verse 14, Allah Ta'ala, He says about Fir'aun and his people, right? He says about Fir'aun, وَقَالَ عَنْهُ وَعَنْ قَوْمِهِ. He says about Fir'aun and about his people, because we're not saying that Fir'aun was the only one to make this claim. He was just their leader and at the head of them, the most vocal, right? But you have others that make that claim. In that time, all the way to our time, people who make that claim. But like Musa, alayhi salam, he said to Fir'aun, you know, making a claim, but you know, deep down you know. Allah Ta'ala, He says about Fir'aun and about the people who denied the lordship of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and they deny it. And they deny it. Right? He says, but their hearts, or they deny it, but they acknowledge it deep inside of themselves. Right? They deny it outwardly, but internally in themselves, they acknowledge it. They know. But they don't let it come out, and they suppress it. Why? Out of transgressiveness and out of haughtiness. This is why they don't admit to it. Out of transgression and being haughty, being arrogant. But deep in themselves, they acknowledge it. They know. They know. Just like Musa told Fir'aun, you know. You're saying what you're saying, but you know. Ma'am. So you find that this is the case even for the kuffar in our time who try to deny the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, try to say who atheists and don't believe in anything and so on and so forth. Deep down, they know. Deep down, they know. Right? The Shaykh, he says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَنْ يُنْكَرُ الرَّبَّ الْيَوْمِ. And just like those who يُنْكَرُ الرَّبَّ الْيَوْمِ, who deny the Lord today, مِنَ الشُّيُوعِيِّينَ, from the communists, for example, from the communists. إِنَّمَا يَنْكُرُونَهُ فِي الظَّاهِرِ مُكَابِرَةً. But rather they only deny Allah outwardly, out of arrogance. وإلا فهم في الباطن لابد أن يعترفوا أنه ما من موجود إلا له موجد وما من مخلوق إلا وله خالق وما من أثر إلا وله مؤثر. قال الله تعالى أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون أم خلقوا السماوات والأرض بل لا يوقنون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or before that, the Shaykh, he mentions, and that these ones who deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from these communists, and they deny the existence of Allah Jalla wa'ala, the Shaykh, he says, these individuals, they are only denying it outwardly, whereas inwardly you find that they acknowledge it and that they agree with it inwardly, right? And I want you to pay attention to this now, because when you take this concept and you put it on other things, it becomes very clear, right? It becomes very clear of their denial and how in reality we can say with them with a certainty, you know. They say, well, you don't know what's in my heart. That's right. I don't know what's in your heart, but Allah knows what's in your heart, and Allah has informed us about people like you that deep down you know. Deep down you know, right? But listen, this how they get busted out, right? Check it out. The Shaykh, he says, they deny it outwardly, but inwardly they know, because inwardly they know deep down that there is nothing that exists except that it has something that brought it into existence. There is nothing that is created except that it has a creator. There is nothing, there are no traces except that there was one who left those traces there. Right? It's like if you came to someone and you said, hey, look at this bottle. It came out of nowhere. They're going to say, no way. Somebody made that bottle. Matter of fact, we know who. We name written right there. That's the name of the company. Right? They're not going to, if you came and you said, oh, you see this right? You see this book bag? Yeah, it just popped up out of nowhere. Who manufactured it? Nobody, man. It just popped out. Nowhere. It's like that. It's nice, right? They're going to say, you crazy. Somebody made that. Let me look at the thing. Oh, see? They're going to manufacture a name, label on it. Right? They're not going to accept that. If you don't accept that when it comes to a book bag or to a bottle, you talking about the heavens and the earth came about like that? And it shows you deep down that they know there's nothing that exists except something brought it into existence. There is nothing that is created except that it has a creator. There is nothing there is no signs that have been left except something left it. Something left a sign. Right or wrong? You don't walk through the desert and find a footstep and think, oh, it just happened like that. Your mind tells you what? Somebody put their foot there before. Right? They acknowledge these concepts on very simple levels, and then they want you to believe. We don't acknowledge it when it comes to that which is more complex. Right? Subhanallah. The kuffar, the scientists, even according to their own research, Allahu a'lam how accurate or inaccurate it is, but even according to their own research, they say, right, for example, that the mathematical equation, right, the mathematical equation in their minds was so intricate that led to life. They said it was so intricate and so delicate that if you took all of the grains of sand in the whole world, right? They said it was so delicate that if you remove one grain of sand, it couldn't have been life. Right? They said that's how delicate it was. That's how precise it was. So even they acknowledge at some level that is too precise to just have happened by accident. This was arranged by an arranger. Right? They'll go through all that and tell you all that. But then their arrogance makes them stop. But I'm not saying there's a God. That's what they say. A'udhu billah. After you said all that, you were so smart, now you want to think you stupid? Right? You were so smart to this point, now you dumb. We can't accept that. We know what? Like what Musa tell Fir'aun? You know. You know. You arrogant, you don't want to accept it, but you know. Deep down, you know. You know. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and this is a challenge. Listen, Allah Ta'ala, He says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ were they created from nothing? Or did they create themselves? Because you only got three possibilities, right? Allah Ta'ala mentions two, He does not mention the third. He says, were you created from nothing? We already explained. It's too detailed. It's, Juyaanee, things are in place. It's too perfect to just be a mistake. It's too perfect. Too perfect. Too precise. So we realize, okay, it couldn't have been from nothing. So then Allah Ta'ala, He says, أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ Or did you create yourself? Did you come out of nowhere, or did you create yourself? And we all know we didn't create ourselves. Right? We all know that. But, so what's the only other possibility? We have a creator. That's the only other possibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't mention the third. Why? Because through process of elimination, if there's only three things and you take away the two, then the only possibility is what? That which hasn't been mentioned, because you have a creator. One of the Sahaba, when he was still in Jahiliyyah, he heard the Prophet reciting Surah Tur. He heard this ayah. He says, يَكَادُ قَلْبِي أَن يُطِيرُ He said, my heart almost flew out my chest. Right? At the time, he was a polytheist. But when he heard this one verse, he said, my heart almost flew out my chest. He said, I immediately went to the Prophet ﷺ, and upon the conclusion of the prayer, he said, I accepted Islam. Immediately. Because he understood. We didn't come from nothing. We didn't just come out of nowhere. Meaning, we didn't just come out of nowhere, pop out of nowhere. And we didn't create ourselves. So, Allah is our creator. But see, the sound mind of the Sahabi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, it leads you to the only possible logical conclusion. Allah is our creator, therefore we have to worship Him. Allah is our creator, therefore we have to listen to Him. When He has sent down His legislation, of course, He knows the best way for us to live because He's the one who gave us life. So whatever He tells us to do, we do it. This is His message, we believe in Him. We adorn ourselves with the Sharia. Allah Ta'ala, He created the Jannah. So He knows the way that's going to lead there. So we listen to Allah and we follow that which He has told us. Allah has created the hellfire. Allah knows better that which will lead you to the hellfire. So if Allah has told us this will lead us to the hellfire, we stay away from it because we don't want to go to hellfire. So the only logical conclusion is we have to accept Islam. That's it. There's no other logical conclusion. We have to accept Islam. And then Allah Ta'ala, He says, or did you create the heavens and the earth? Or did you create the heavens and the earth? Allah Ta'ala, He says, nay, they have no firm belief. They have no firm belief. And even these scientists, when you push them into a corner, right, and you break down their theories, how it don't make sense, it doesn't add up, the slick one, what are you going to tell you? Well, it's just a theory. It's just a theory. Right? That's the way out. Just a theory. Because they don't have firm belief. They don't have firm belief. Why? Because they're not standing upon anything. The Shaykh, he says, تَأَمَّلَ الْعَالَمِ كُلَّ. He said, contemplate over the creation. Contemplate over the world. Right? All of it. The Shaykh, he says, علوه, the lowest portions of it, and the highest portions of it, and the lowest portions of it, every aspect of it, بجميع الجزائر, all aspects, all the details of the world. Look at it, contemplate over it, right? Contemplate over it. Contemplate over the volcanoes and the tectonic plates, and how the sky has no rifts in it, and the atmosphere, and the trees, and photosynthesis, and so on and so on. Contemplate over all these things. Contemplate over these things. The Shaykh, he says, تَجِدُهُ شَاهِدًا بِإِثْبَاتِ صَانِعُ. You will find that these things are a witness that proves its maker. وَفَاطِرُ وَمَلِيكُ. That proves its maker, that proves its fashioner, that proves its owner. That proves that Allah Ta'ala, He owns it. And then the Shaykh, he says something that is tremendous. He says, فَإِنْكَارُ صَانِعَةً وَجَهْدَ في العقول والفطر بمنزل إنكار العلم وجهده. He says, and the denial of the maker, the denial of the creator, and to arrogantly turn away and deny it and reject it, intellectually and with regard to man's natural inclination, he says, and this is in reality the denial and rejection of knowledge itself. لا فرق بينهما. There is no difference between the two. There's no difference between the two. You understand? These people will come and they try to say, but scientifically, this, that, and the third. But we say to them, anyone who denies the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anyone who denies that these things that we see were created by a creator, were fashioned by a fashioner, whoever denies that, then you have denied science itself. You have denied science itself. You understand? Because what people, these kuffar, what they don't understand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an, He calls us to reflect upon the creation, reflect upon the creations of ourselves, reflect upon the sky, reflect upon the camel, reflect. right? The reflection upon these things is what the people will call in modern terms what? Science, right? There is no contradiction in Islam between science, quote unquote, and between our deen. Why? Because the creator of the heavens and the earth, the one who created and fashioned the heavens and the earth, and who created all of these systems that the heavens and the earth that are present inside the heavens and the earth, right, is the same creator that sent down the Qur'an to the creation. The same creator that sent down the legislation to the creatures. There's no contradiction. Islam is not threatened. Islam is not threatened by scientific pursuits. But Islam, it puts things in its proper place. As we were talking about last week with regards to technology, how these people look at it and they think, oh, it's because of us. No, it puts it in its proper place. Allah provided you with that. It's all from Allah. Allah provided you with that. So this just increases the fact of La ilaha illallah. Likewise, when we look at these things and, subhanallah, we look at cells and atoms and so on and so forth, and that just reinforces La ilaha illallah. Because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make that. Only Allah can do that. That's it. Only Allah can do that. When one reflects on photosynthesis, for example, right? Only Allah can do that. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that. Gravity, only Allah can do that. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that. And so on and so forth. So all these things is reinforced La ilaha illallah. But a person who is not guided, and they come upon these things and they think that this gives them a justification to deny La ilaha illallah. Now we are modern men, now we understand things, now we don't have to be superstitious like the people from before. They couldn't explain stuff, so they just made up stuff. No. These things are not tools by way in which you should become arrogant by. These are tools by way in which what shall humble you. Because when you realize and you look, subhanallah, I don't understand how there can be a doctor in the world who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I really don't understand. Anybody has a sound intellect, you see, but then therein is the answer to my question. Therein is a solution to my confusion. It's because they don't have a sound intellect. That's why. Because they don't have a sound intellect. The sound intellect brings you to only one conclusion, and the right conclusion is La ilaha illallah. So the Shaykh, he says, and that which you find that the communists that they flaunt, نعم, وما تتبجح به الشيوعية اليوم من إنكار وجود الرب إنما هو من باب المكابرة. He said, and that which you find that the communists today they flaunt, and the atheists that they flaunt today from denying the existence of the Creator or existence of the Lord, then verily this is only from the standpoint of them being arrogant. From the standpoint of them being arrogant, wa musadara nata'ij al-uqul wal-afkar as-sahiha, and it's from the standpoint of them being arrogant, and also from the standpoint that the truthful and correct intellectual conclusions has been seized from them, that they have been deprived of the sound intellectual conclusions, that the sound intellectual conclusions have been seized from them and sequestered from them. They have been prevented, so they don't reach the sound intellectual conclusion. And the Shaykh, he says, وَمَنْ كَانَ بِهَذَا مَثَابَةً فَقَدْ أَلْوَى عَقْلُهُ وَدَعَى النَّاسِ لِسُخْرِيَّةٍ مِنْهُ. The Shaykh, he says, and whoever finds that this is his resort, this is his fallback, this is the place of his resort, he says, meaning that they deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they don't have the sound and right intellectual conclusions, and because of they are astray and their arrogance has made them deny it. He said, whoever is upon this way and this is his resort, he says in this individual, he has nullified and he has canceled out his intellect, and he calls people to his utter foolishness. So all of these atheist scientists, and forget about the alien theorists, that's really clear, huh? He said all of these fools, all that they have done is they have nullified and canceled out their intellects, and they have called the people to their utter foolishness. وقال شاعر, a poet, he said, كيف يعصي الإله كيف يعصي الله ويجهدوه الجاهد وفي كل شيء له آية تدل على أنه واحد. الله أكبر. He said كيف يعصي الله أو كيف يعصي الإله ويجحدوه الجاحد وفي كل شيء له آية تدل على أنه واحد. He said, how do they disobey Allah, and how do they arrogantly reject, or how is it that the one who arrogantly rejects him, when everything, inside of everything there is an ayah, there is a sign and an evidence that points to the fact that verily He, Allah, is one. That's the haqq. That's the haqq. في كل شيء له آية تدل على أنه واحد. And everything there is an ayat that points to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. And this is the conclusion of the sound-minded person when he reflects upon these things and he realizes La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. And then it brings us to the next portion and the next section. فنكتفي بهذا القدر، وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وجزاكم الله خيرا.